Welcome to another deep dive. Today we'll be looking into the work of Alan Watts.
Oh, yeah, Alan Watts.
Now, he's this philosopher who had a way of making complicated ideas really relatable.
You did.
And we're going to be looking into a concept of his called the human scanning system.
Interesting.
And is this idea that we often tend to analyze life instead of, actually living it.
Right.
So are we really present in the world, or are we stuck in our heads and missing out on everything life has to offer?
Well, what I think is so fascinating about Watts is that he took Eastern philosophy, which often can seem, very esoteric,
Yeah.
and he found a way to translate it into a language that actually resonated with Western audiences.
Yeah.
He wasn't just explaining these ideas, he was grappling with them, trying to figure them out in the context of modern life.
Exactly. And he didn't shy away from the big questions. So let's talk about this whole human scanning system. What did Watts mean by that?
Okay, so imagine your mind is always scanning the environment,
Mm-hmm.
like a radar picking up information and trying to piece it all together
Okay.
into some coherent picture. That's essentially what Watts was getting at.
Uh-huh.
He believed that our minds are designed to analyze and break down experience,
Right.
which can be useful for sure,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it also stops us from fully being in the moment.
It's like we're so busy trying to figure everything out that we forget to just experience it.
Exactly.
Right.
And Watts wasn't just theorizing about this. He used these really great analogies to illustrate it, like the
Yeah.
rope analogy from his book Beyond Theology.
Okay.
He talks about a rope made of all these different materials,
Uh-huh.
hemp, silk, cotton, you name it.
Right.
But the knot, the pattern stays the same.
Oh,
This is how he viewed the self as like a pattern of behavior, a process, rather than any kind of fixed substance.
I see. I'm starting to get this.
Mm-hmm.
So if our sense of self is just a pattern, then what does that mean for how we experience the world around us?
Well, it means that we tend to cling to labels and identities. Mm-hmm.
Even though our experiences and even our physical bodies are constantly changing, we get so attached to this idea of who we are, what we believe, and what we want.
Okay.
And this creates this feeling of separation between us and everything else.
So that separation leads to feeling disconnected.
Yes.
Like we're not really a part of life, but like we're on the outside just looking in.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that sense of disconnection can show up in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety, depression, feeling like things are meaningless, or even just, a general dissatisfaction with life.
Yeah.
It's like we're always searching for something outside of ourselves to make us happy.
Yeah.
But true happiness can only be found in the present moment in experiencing life as it is.
And this is what I find so interesting. Watts was talking about this a long time ago,
Decades ago.
but now neuroscience is actually backing up a lot of what he said.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Neuroscientists have found this thing called the default mode network,
Yeah.
which is basically the brain on autopilot,
Oh.
constantly churning out thoughts and stories about ourselves.
Oh, just like Watts described. And this default mode network is usually connected to overthinking, dwelling on things, and a feeling of being separate from now.
So our brains are basically wired to create this illusion of a separate self,
Right.
which then causes all these anxieties and insecurity.
Exactly. And that's where mindfulness comes in. By practicing mindfulness, we can start to see these thought patterns without getting swept away by them.
Okay.
We can learn to see that thoughts are just thoughts. They're
Yeah.
not necessarily real.
So mindfulness helps us to step back from all that mental chatter and become more aware of the present moment of what we're sensing and what's around us.
Exactly. And that shift in awareness can be really liberating. It helps us connect with this deeper sense of peace and presence that's always there.
Yeah.
But it's usually hidden by our busy minds.
So if we're always analyzing and picking apart life,
Yeah.
how do we get out of this mental trap? How do we start experiencing the world more directly, more fully?
Watts believed that the key was to cultivate this sense of letting go, surrendering to how life flows without needing to control or analyze every single thing.
Okay.
He was really inspired by Zen Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
which really emphasizes being fully present in the moment without judgment or getting attached to outcomes.
Letting go can seem kind of abstract, though. How do we actually do that in our everyday lives?
Well, it starts by noticing the human scanning system at work,
Okay.
Pay attention to how your mind jumps from one thought to the next.
Okay.
How it gets caught up in stories, worries, judgments.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up for having these thoughts. Just notice them with a sense of detachment.
Like watching clouds go by.
Yeah,
You're not trying to grab them or stop them. You're just watching.
exactly. And as you become more aware of your thoughts, you can start to choose which ones to engage with and which ones to just let go of.
So it's about being more aware of the choices we make in each moment, the stories we tell ourselves, and the reality we're creating through our perceptions.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we have the power to shape our experience, to create a life that aligns with our deepest values and what we want to achieve.
Yeah.
But that takes a willingness to question what we believe, to challenge the way things are, and to step outside of our comfort zones.
And that's exactly what Alan Watts did his whole life.
Yeah.
He was constantly pushing boundaries, challenging conventional wisdom, and inviting us to see the world in a totally different way.
And that's what makes his work so timeless and relevant. He wasn't just a philosopher. He was a guide, a provocateur, and ultimately a champion of the human spirit.
So are we really living in the moment? That's a question we'll keep exploring as we dive deeper into Alan Watts' work.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Are we so focused on the map that we forget to actually experience the territory? Watts had this amazing way of using analogies.
Oh, I love that analogy of the map and the territory.
Yeah.
Like we get so caught up in navigating like the mental map of our lives
Right.
that we forget to actually look up and see the beauty of everything around us. But how do we break free from this map? How do we stop clinging to these thought patterns that are familiar but ultimately limit us?
Watts really believed in the power of direct experience.
Huh.
He said that we can't really understand something just by thinking about it.
Right.
We have to feel it, sense it, engage with it on a deeper level.
So it's not enough to just understand the idea of the human scanning system.
Right.
It's about actually seeing how it affects our lives.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about noticing how the scanning system shows up in our everyday experiences.
Okay.
Like, think about the last time you ate a meal.
Okay.
Were you really present with the taste, the textures, the smells of the food?
Yeah.
Or were you lost in thought, maybe planning your next task, replaying a conversation, or scrolling through your phone?
Wow. I am so guilty of that.
Yeah.
I often eat lunch at my desk and I barely even taste my food
Yeah.
because I'm so focused on work.
That's a classic example of the scanning system at work. Our minds are so used to multitasking, to analyzing and planning, that we forget to simply be present with what we're doing.
Yeah. It's not just about food, though, is it?
No, not at all.
This applies to so many parts of our lives.
Right.
Relationships,
Yeah.
work, creativity, even just walking down the street.
Exactly. We can get so caught up in our internal dialogue
Yeah.
and our judgments and expectations that we miss out on the richness and spontaneity of life as it happens.
Okay.
Watts would argue that this is the root of a lot of our suffering, the feeling of being separate from the world, from ourselves, and ultimately from the source of life itself.
So how do we reconnect with that source? How do we move beyond the scanning system and experience life more fully?
Watts was a huge advocate for meditation and mindfulness practices.
Okay.
He saw them as really powerful ways to quiet the mind and cultivate a deeper sense of presence.
I've tried meditation before, but I always had trouble quieting my mind.
Yeah.
It felt like the more I tried to stop thinking, the more thoughts would pop up.
That's very common.
Yeah.
The key is not to force your mind to be quiet, but to observe your thoughts as they come up without getting carried away by them.
Right.
Like, picture yourself sitting by a stream watching the leaves float by.
Okay.
You don't try to stop the leaves, you just watch them go by.
I like that image. So it's about creating space between ourselves and our thoughts.
Right.
A space where we can simply be present with whatever's happening.
Exactly. And that space of presence is where true freedom lies.
Oh, wow.
It's where we can connect with our intuition, our creativity, and our deepest sense of purpose.
So mindfulness isn't just about relaxing or reducing stress.
No.
It's about accessing a deeper level of awareness
Yes.
that can inform our actions and choices.
Precisely. It's about developing a closer relationship with ourselves
Okay.
and with the world around us. Watts believed that this kind of awareness was essential for living a truly fulfilling and meaningful life.
But isn't there a risk of becoming too detached? Don't we need some level of analysis and planning to handle the complexities of life?
That's a good point. Watts wasn't saying we should completely abandon thinking.
Thinking is a useful tool, but it becomes a problem when it takes over our experience, when we become slaves to our thoughts.
So it's about finding a balance between thinking and feeling, analysis and intuition planning and spontaneity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about developing a more balanced way of being in the world,
Okay.
one that honors both our rational minds and our intuitive hearts. Watts often talked about the importance of playfulness and humor,
Oh, yes.
of not taking ourselves too seriously.
I love his playful spirit.
Yeah.
It's like he's reminding us that life isn't just about achieving goals and checking things off a list.
Right.
It's also about enjoying the journey, embracing the unexpected, and laughing at ourselves along the way.
He saw humor as a powerful antidote to the rigidity and seriousness that we often bring to life.
Yeah.
He believed that laughter could help us loosen our grip on our fixed ideas and beliefs and allow us to see the world with fresh eyes.
It's like that Zen saying, enlightenment is a belly laugh.
Exactly. And it's not just about laughter. It's about cultivating a sense of wonder and curiosity.
About approaching life with a beginner's mind as if we're seeing everything for the first time.
That makes me think of something Watts said about the importance of divine alchemy.
Oh, yeah.
He believed that the universe is constantly transforming itself,
Right.
that everything is in a state of flux and change.
And he saw this process of transformation as inherently creative and playful.
Okay.
He believed that we could tap into this creative energy by letting go of our rigid ideas and embracing the unknown.
So instead of resisting change, we can learn to dance with it,
Yes.
to see the beauty and possibility in every moment, even the tough ones.
And that takes trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Trust in ourselves, trust in the process of life, and maybe even trust in something bigger than ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Trusting the process, trusting the unknown. It's not always easy,
No, it's not.
but I can see how it could be incredibly liberating.
Watts often talked about the wisdom of insecurity.
Uh-huh.
The idea that true freedom comes from accepting that everything is impermanent. He believed that clinging to security and certainty was an illusion, a recipe for suffering.
It's like he's challenging us to step outside of our comfort zones,
Right.
to embrace the unknown and to discover the hidden treasures that are beyond the familiar.
And that's where the real adventure begins.
But how do we cultivate that sense of trust, especially in a world that often feels so uncertain and unpredictable?
It starts with recognizing that we're not separate from the universe,
Okay.
that we're all interconnected, that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves. Watts believed that this realization was the key to unlocking our true potential.
It's about shifting from a mindset of fear and scarcity
Yeah.
to one of abundance and possibility.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even in the middle of chaos and uncertainty, there's a fundamental order and intelligence at play.
That intelligence, that creative energy is available to us in every moment.
Yes.
But how do we tune into it?
Mm.
How do we quiet the mental noise and access that deeper wisdom?
Watts often used the analogy of a radio receiver to describe this process.
Okay.
He said, our minds are like radios constantly picking up signals from the universe.
Right.
But if we're always tuned to the same station, the same limited frequency, we miss out on all the other possibilities out there.
That's a powerful image. So it's not about turning off the radio completely.
Right.
It's about learning to tune into different frequencies,
Exactly.
to explore the full range of our being. But how do we do that?
Well, there are many different practices and techniques that can help us expand our awareness and connect with that deeper wisdom. Meditation is a powerful one, but it's not the only one. Watts was a big believer in the power of art, music, dance, and even just spending time in nature.
So it's about finding what works for us.
Yes,
What helps us quiet the mind and open our hearts?
exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of presence,
Okay.
of being fully immersed in the moment, whether we're washing the dishes, listening to music, or just taking a walk in the park.
It's about bringing that same sense of awareness and attention to everything we do,
Yes.
no matter how small or big it may seem.
And as we do that, as we start to live more consciously, we begin to notice the interconnectedness of everything. We realize that we're not separate from the world around us, but rather a part of something much larger.
That reminds me of Watt's discussion of the organism-environment relationship.
Yeah.
He argued that it's more accurate to see ourselves as a unified field with our surroundings,
Right.
rather than as separate entities.
It's a big shift in perspective, isn't it?
It is.
It challenges our deep-seated beliefs about who we are and our place in the world.
Instead of trying to conquer nature,
Right.
we can learn to live in harmony with it, recognizing that our well-being is tied to the well-being of the planet.
And this brings us back to the main question. Are you truly living in the moment?
Yeah,
Are you experiencing life directly or just analyzing it?
it's a good question to think about, isn't it?
It is.
It's a reminder to step out of our heads and into the richness of experience that's available to us right now. But it's easier said than done. How do we actually make that shift? How do we move from a life of analysis to a life of experience?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll keep exploring as we go deeper into Alan Watts' insights.
Okay.
But for now, maybe we can just sit with that question.
Yeah.
Let it simmer in our minds and see what comes up.
I feel like Watts is encouraging us to approach life with like an open mind and curiosity, like a child seeing the world for the first time.
Right, like a beginner.
But how do we hold on to that sense of wonder as we get older?
That is the paradox, isn't it? The more we learn, the more we experience, the easier it is to fall into those habitual ways of thinking.
Yeah.
Those preconceived ideas about how the world works. But Watts believed we could get back to that childlike sense of wonder by cultivating what he called a philosophical attitude.
Philosophical attitude? What does that even mean?
For Watts, it wasn't about being an academic philosopher. It was about approaching life with a questioning mind,
Oh.
a willingness to question everything, even our own beliefs and assumptions.
Right.
It was about seeing the world as this vast, mysterious playground,
Yeah.
full of endless possibilities for discovery and delight.
So it's not about finding all the answers.
No,
It's about embracing the mystery.
embracing the unknown.
Yeah.
And that can be incredibly liberating.
Okay.
It allows us to let go of needing to control everything, to relax into the flow of life, and to just appreciate the beauty and wonder of each moment, even the ordinary ones.
It's like that quote from Einstein. There are only two ways to live your life.
Right.
One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle.
That's perfect. Watts would absolutely agree with that. He saw miracles everywhere in the ordinary and the extraordinary.
Yeah.
He saw the interconnectedness of everything, the
Oh.
intricate dance of energy and matter that makes up the universe.
He often talked about the universe as like a grand symphony,
Yes.
with each of us playing a unique and important part.
And he believed that we could tap into the harmony of that symphony simply by tuning into the present moment, by becoming aware of the symphony that's already playing within us and all around us.
So it's not about adding anything new.
Yeah.
It's about removing the distractions, the mental noise that keeps us from hearing the music.
Exactly. It's like peeling away layers of clothing that we've put on over the years.
Okay.
The layers of conditioning beliefs and expectations that are hiding our true nature.
So it's a process of uncovering, of rediscovering who we really are beneath all those layers.
Exactly. And that process of uncovering can be challenging. It can be messy. It can be uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly rewarding. It's the path to true freedom, to authentic self-expression, and to a life that truly aligns with our deepest values and aspirations.
You know, it strikes me that Watts' message is ultimately hopeful.
Hmm.
He's not saying that life is easy or that we should try to avoid pain or suffering.
Right.
He's saying that even in the middle of difficulty, there's still beauty, there's meaning, there's joy to be found.
He's reminding us that we have a choice. We can choose to live in fear and anxiety, always scanning for threats and worrying about the future. Or we can choose to live in love and gratitude. Yeah. Embracing the present moment and appreciating the gift of life.
So it boils down to a change in perspective.
Yes.
A change in how we choose to see the world.
Exactly. And that change in perspective can change everything. It can transform our relationships, our work, our creativity, and ultimately our whole experience of life.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I'm seeing the world with new eyes,
Yeah.
with a fresh sense of wonder and possibility.
I'm glad to hear that. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to explore Alan Watts's work more deeply
Yeah.
and to try out the practices and ideas we've talked about today.
Remember, it's not about being an expert in Eastern philosophy or mastering complicated meditation techniques. It's about taking small steps one moment at a time
Right.
to bring more presence, awareness, and gratitude into your life.
And as you do that, as you start to live more consciously, you might find that the world around you starts to reflect that change.
Okay.
You might find that you become more aware of the beauty and wonder that's always there, just waiting to be noticed.
So we'll leave you with one last question to think about.
Yeah.
Are you living in the moment? Are you really experiencing the richness of life as it happens?
Good question.
Take a moment to think about that and let the answer guide your journey.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, may you live fully, love deeply, and laugh often.